Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Today we have some major updates for the Andor series. After we got our first exclusive clip for the show yesterday, Tony Gilroy's opened up about various things. For one thing, he confirmed he won't be directing any episodes in season 2. He also says to not expect any fan service in either season, and more importantly, he says that Andor is going to be the first Star Wars TV show aimed at adults. So let's dive into everything. But before we do, my dear friends, if you've not done so already, please be sure to hit that big red subscribe button and also give the bell a good old tickle to be alerted every time that I post a new video. So as we say around here, without any more jibber jabber, let's dive straight into the news. Before we talk about the Andor series, we have some new leaks for the Acolyte. As you guys know, there have been two leakers, Nerodo and Ahsoka, who've been providing details for the Acolyte and Tales of the Jedi. Well, they've created a new leak website called Fulcrum Leaks, and on there, they've been breaking down each episode of the Acolyte based on concept art, details they found out, and their sources. Now, we covered episode 1 in a recent video. I outlined the main characters, Aura, Miri, their grandfather, the aliens that attack their village, Paul, the Sith Lord, and many more. Well, today guys, we're going to look at episode 2. Now, as always, inevitably a massive spoiler warning. If you don't want to know anything about the show, turn away now or skip forward to the Andor section. The chapters of the video are down there on the timeline or in the description. So no more jibber jabber, let's dive straight into it. So they preface this by saying there is a lot of info missing from where episode 1 ends, so episode 2 doesn't pick up immediately. There is a bit of a time jump, but the episode is set in the present day. Aura is all grown up now, and the aliens have been attacking the village regularly, but the Jedi always return to help them. Now Paul, a rich arms dealer and unbeknownst to them a Sith Lord, sells weapons to Theo, the grandfather, and the villagers so they can fend for themselves. Now someday soon after, the aliens attack once again. Despite the village sending out a distress call, the Jedi are nowhere to be seen, so they don't come to help them this time. Theo, Aura, Paul, and the villagers put up a fight, this time armed, but it's not enough. They're overrun and everyone except for Aura appears to be killed, including Theo, the grandfather. Now Theo's death affects Aura, as you would expect, in such an immense way. She's so devastated that in her anger, she develops a sort of force power, or as they call it, a force level up. A new power which is sort of like a shockwave, and when it activates, the force shoots out of her. And in this case, it completely wipes out the alien attackers, sealing their victory. So Aura goes off into the wilderness with the intention to kill the rest of the alien tribe. They say many come out to fight her, but she's so enraged that she kills them all. She doesn't attack the village though, as she discovers that there are children. And I guess that's the biggest difference between her and Anakin. Anakin didn't just kill the men, but the women and the children too. But Aura just doesn't have it in her to kill the children. So when she gets back to her village, the only Jedi that arrives to help her is Melody, but she's too late. Paul has already subdued her. Despite her now being a fully trained Jedi Knight, Paul orders Aura to finish the job. Despite previously having a connection with her, Aura does as she's told, and she kills Melody, her friend. So as you guys can see, Aura is slowly turning to the dark side. She goes to claim her lightsaber, but Paul takes it away from her. Aura now has no one, no village, no grandfather, no friends, and no little sister. So with nothing left to lose, she agrees to go with Paul. And so in the final bit of this breakdown, the leakers say the two of them arrive at Paul's palace on a new planet called Feather, a big black castle perched upon a mountain, covered in large holes and burrows, home to some sort of alien bug species, and this castle is Paul's main base of operation. Really awesome stuff, guys. I can't wait for more of it. A big thank you to Fulcrum Leaks. So now guys, let's talk about Andor. Tony Gilroy spoke to the playlist and Variety, and so today I want to go through various highlights and what they mean for the Andor series. So first of all, we learned that the journey to making Andor happen was not easy. In fact, Tony Gilroy didn't even want to make a prequel to Rogue One. He figured that the 2016 movie, which is a prequel in itself, was enough. But Kathleen Kennedy was so impressed by Gareth Edwards' film that she went to Tony Gilroy, the screenwriter, and asked him what's next, what can we do with these characters? Eventually, of course, he pitched the idea of a spy thriller, and Kathleen Kennedy loved it, but for a very long time he had no ideas and no interest in making another grand space saga. By 2018, Lucasfilm had already begun developing a TV series that was set before the events of Rogue One, and this followed Cassian's life with his trusty droid, K2SO. In the early stages, Gilroy was not involved in any capacity, but the studio sent him the script. He remembers saying the material was fine, but very hard to sustain, so while still professing no interest in the job, Gilroy wrote a long forensic manifesto back to Lucasfilm that not only outlined why he thought the approach didn't work, but what he thought the studio should do instead, and it was so radical that it actually could work, and this idea was a 12-episode series titled Andor. Tony Gilroy eventually got on board, and he makes it very clear this is nothing like any Star Wars we've ever seen before. And in this interview, he basically says that even though it's Cassian's story, he's telling a wider narrative about this point in the galaxy's timeline. And one thing that Tony Gilroy wants to get across to everyone, there's going to be no fan service. There's no Skywalkers, no Jedi. It's the story of lowly factory workers and mid-level technocrats, characters that he calls unremarkable, but who by the end of the season are in the spotlight. Gilroy says in his own words, "I wanted to do it about real people." He says, until now, Star Wars has been about the royal family in essence. It's been great, but there's a billion other things in the galaxy. There's plumbers, cosmeticians, journalists. What are their lives like under the Empire? He says the revolution is affecting them just as much as anyone else, so why not use the Star Wars canon as a host organism for something absolutely realistic, something passionate, dramatic, great storytelling. And when he was asked if we're going to see any other legacy characters outside Mon Mothma, he said, never fan service. In other words, a big no. And it was precisely this ground level approach, this out of left field Star Wars story, that convinced Diego Luna to return as Cassian. It's the articulation of rebellion, he says. It's really not about this one character, it's about a community. And this broader perspective surprised other actors. For example, Carl Soler, who plays Cyril Khan. Soler says, it was completely different from what I expected from a Star Wars script. I had to flip back and look at the title. He said, no, this is Star Wars. I just felt like, wow, this is incredibly grown up, gritty, and messy. And citing a very surprising moments that you wouldn't expect in the galaxy far, far away, Soler says at one stage Cyril comes home and spends time with his mother, which is so un-Star Warsy. You never see Imperials go home to their families, let alone vent out their problems to them, and you see their whole backstory and how they got this way. So going back to Tony Gilroy, he then explains why he didn't want to use the volume, or at least not rely on it. He says the scope of this series, the ambitious storytelling, required something bigger, shooting on real locations and sprawling, fully constructed sets in London. For him, the volume just didn't capture that. In his own words, he said, I imagined that I was either going to be on a green screen or that I would have to be in front of a virtual set, and that is not something that Gilroy nor Adria Arjona, who plays Cassian's love interest Bix, a mechanic on the planet of Ferrix, wanted. And speaking of what it was like being there, Adria says they created an entire city. When you see Ferrix, it actually exists. I was there. They built the entire set. There was no virtual backdrop. It was all there in person. And speaking of this planet of Ferrix, the homeworld of Cassian that gets destroyed by the Empire, Denise Goff, who plays Dedra Meero, says that she was similarly impressed. She says, there was what looks like a sushi bar, and I looked in one of the bowls and there were actually blue noodles. In the next one, there was a skewer with some sort of strange animals on it. I thought, wow, nobody's ever going to see this. These details, this is all done for us. So the galaxy far, far away really unfolded for these actors right in front of their eyes. And those sets really included everything from palatial homes to high-class brothels, housing projects, restaurants, all designed to help ground the storytelling and to help the actors feel as though they're really there. For Tony Gilroy, the believability and convincingness of this series is everything. Now, speaking of what it's going to be like for casual fans, Tony Gilroy says you should be able to watch the Andor show and, quote, not give a shit about Star Wars. You never have to have seen it. This should work on its own. But in the very same breath, he acknowledges that the diehard fans are going to get something huge out of this. He says, quote, the hope, the dream is that the really hardcore Star Wars community are going to embrace the show in a new way. I hope they're going to be thrilled to have someone come in and completely uncynically get down molecularly in their world and treat it like a real thing. He's not interested in breaking canon, but rather adding to it and giving us something very, very different. Lucasfilm's first 3 Star Wars shows were deliberately designed as family viewing, with straightforward plots and arguably kid-friendly characters. That wasn't always the case, but Star Wars has always been for adults and kids alike, for the family as I say. But this one is different. This has been taken out of context over the last 24 hours, but I want to clarify that Tony Gilroy is not underplaying other Star Wars projects. He's simply saying there is a level of maturity, an emotional sophistication and narrative complexity that sets this show apart. In his own words, he says, I don't think this one's for 9-year-olds, which is not to say the show doesn't embrace Star Wars roots, but rather it's an adventure series, a spy thriller that adults are going to get the most out of. But Tony Gilroy reminds everyone that getting to this stage was not easy, and doing so proved far more all-consuming than Gilroy intended. At first he thought, I'm going to build the first season, get it up and rolling, and then someone else can come in and take it over. But ultimately, he says, that really wasn't feasible feasible. He's too invested, there's too much at stake, and in the end, he went all in. As we know, the Andor series was originally going to be 5 seasons, and now it's been cut down to 2. And while Tony's the showrunner for both seasons, he's not going to direct in season 2, and he teases the second season is going to have a very different feel to the first. Diego Luna spoke about Star Wars and where it's heading. We're not part of a saga that doesn't end, even if our end is clear, and he's talking about Cassian's sacrifice in Rogue One. And Tony Gilroy finishes by adding that after this, he's done with the galaxy far, far away. Andor is pretty much what he wants to do. That's his legacy, and he says he's very proud of it. This quote bespoke enormous thing that we're trying to make, and in the process revolutionizing how audiences think of Star Wars. Really, really awesome stuff. So that, my friends, is the bulk of what Tony said. I'm super excited, there is so much to digest. I love the scene that we got yesterday as well, and you really get the sense with Stellan Skarsgård's character Luthen Rael that as audiences, we can't really trust anyone at this stage. That's something Tony Gilroy also mentioned a few weeks ago. Share your thoughts in the comments down below, guys. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you always. I'm Star Wars Meg. Have a good one.